Hi everyone. So we are going to begin with our next lecture. Okay, so we have discussed the Beatles album Still Rubber Soul, and now we are going to look at the album's post Rubber Soul. So I'm just going to share the screen. Okay. Okay, so we're going to look at the album's post Rubber Soul. Okay. So yeah. Okay, so the lecture is going to explore the groundbreaking recording techniques and in studio experimentations employed by the Beatles from Rubber Soul to Abbey Road. We will also delve into how these innovations transformed music production, showcasing their use of multi track recording, unconventional use of instruments. We have already looked at the use of the sitar in the song Norwegian Wood in Rubber Soul. So we are going to look at similar kinds of experimentations and the use of innovative sound effects. By examining specific albums and songs, we will also highlight the creative processes that defined an era and influenced countless artists. Okay, so let's begin. So, transitioning to experimental music. So, in the beginning, we have looked at the influence of skiffle music. We have looked at the influence of Motown records, Buddy Holly, and artists such as Chuck Berry and Little Richard. So that formed the early aspects of the Beatles' music. But later, you find that they gradually transitioned to an experimental music. I'll just use the where should I? Yeah, I think this is nicer. Okay, so that you can see me. Right. So in the mid 1960s, the Beatles shifted from pop to experimental music, exemplified by albums like Revolver and Sgt. Pepper's, which reflected on a cultural and musical innovation. Okay, so cultural influences on sounds. The Beatles' music evolved alongside the 1960s counterculture. Okay, it evolved around the 1960s counterculture, incorporating diverse influences such as Indian music, psychedelia, and avant garde techniques. I'm going to give examples of all of it, so please don't worry. The Beatles' music evolved alongside 1960s counterculture. Actually, we will dedicate an entire unit to that, okay? How they influenced counterculture. But right now, we are just going to focus on the musical experimentations, different use of recording techniques. And as I said, different kinds of different kinds of um innovative sound effects. Okay, so those are the things that we will look at for our lecture right now. Then, Rubber Soul to Abbey Road showcases their evolution. Okay, with each album introducing groundbreaking techniques from innovative studio effects to complex arrangements that defined their continuing legacy. Okay, so that is what we are going to cover. Just give me one moment. I will. Mm, 1 second. Okay, so let's go and look at the other conversations. Okay, so Rubber Soul, as we discussed in the previous lecture, okay, we looked at it partially, but right now we can kind of, not partially, we actually kind of covered a lot of ground with regards to that, but we can just review it again. So, Rubber Soul marked a shift with folk influences, featuring acoustic guitars, sitars, harmonicas, reflecting the 1960s folk revival and expanding the Beatles' musical palette. Okay, so very significant. We have seen, I gave you examples of the different recording techniques in Norwegian Wood and Michelle. Okay, the innovative use of double tracking on vocals created a richer sound. Okay, so the technique was notably used in Norwegian Wood, enhancing the emotional depth and texture of the song. Okay, and then you also have unconventional song structures, okay, which do not necessarily fall into that, um, you know, which of the lyric. Okay, so it does not necessarily fall into the structure of the romantic lyric, if you like. So you have In My Life showcasing unconventional structures, moving away from traditional pop formats, and the experimentation paved the way for more complex compositions in future albums. Okay, so important to highlight it. Um, right. So just to give you a sense, like with the release of Rubber Soul in 1965, the Beatles entered their most experimental and studio-driven phase. Okay, no longer constrained by the need to reproduce their songs live, they began to treat the recording studio itself as a creative instrument. So that is again a very important point. We have talked about it in we have talked about it when we were discussing the influence of Chuck Berry on John Lennon and Paul McCartney. So the guitar itself becomes more than just an accompaniment. So with regards to Rubber Soul as well, the recording studio becomes a creative instrument. Working closely with producer George Martin and engineers like Geoff Emerick, the band pioneered techniques in multi-track recording, tape manipulation, artificial effects, and unconventional instrumentation. Okay. The period from 1966 Revolver through 1967 Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band to again 1967's Magical Mystery Tour and into 1968-69's later works produced some of the most innovative recordings in popular music. Okay, so let's look at Tomorrow Never Knows. Okay, so Tomorrow Never Knows is from Revolver. All right, one of the most radical tracks in the Beatles catalog is Tomorrow Never Knows from Revolver, built on a single chord tone. Okay, so it's built on a single chord tone, and the song abandons traditional harmony in favor of texture and rhythm. Okay, I will get like make you listen to the song. So let's just go over what it does. So the recording uses multiple tape loops, okay, short segments of recorded sound that were physically spliced into loops and played simultaneously on several tape machines. Okay, these loops included seagull like guitar sounds, okay, manipulated guitar recordings, orchestral snippets, distorted laughter, and voices. Okay, each loop was fed into the mixing console manually, with engineers adjusting levels in real time during the final mix. It created a constantly shifting sonic landscape, essentially an early form of sampling. Okay, John Lennon wanted his voice to sound like the Dalai Lama chanting from a mountaintop. Okay, to achieve it, his vocals were run through a rotating Leslie speaker, typically used for organs. Okay, so that gave the voice a swirling, otherworldly quality. The track is often cited as a precursor to electronic music and hip hop sampling and ambient sound design. Okay, its use of loops and studio manipulation was decades ahead of its time. Okay, so I'm just going to play that so that you have a sense of how it sounds.
आपको मिल सकते
Oh
हैं
my God. Just 1 second. Right. Yes, please continue. You can't avoid advertisements, but in case you really want ads, um, drink Diet Coke. Drink Diet Coke and any other kinds of energy drinks like Red Bull. Um, those are good drinks to drink. Um, yeah. Okay. Right. So it uses multiple tapes. Okay. Layered on top of each other. So that is important to remember. And then again, John Lennon particularly, you can see that it's not very, it's not very direct, that sound of his voice. Okay. It really does sound like, it's coming from afar. Okay. And yeah, and to achieve that, his vocals were run through a rotating Leslie speaker, which is typically used for organs, and it gives the voice a swirling, otherworldly quality. All right, so it's important to take that into account. Um, So again, you have Eleanor Rigby being a very, very distinctive, distinctive sound of the Beatles. So for Eleanor Rigby, which was also part of Revolver, which came out in 1966, the song represents a different kind of innovation. Instead of rock instrumentation, it features a string octet, which was arranged by George Martin, the music producer of the Beatles. He produced all of the 8 albums of the Beatles, and and that included 17 hits of the Beatles. Okay, so it's an integral part of the music production of the Beatles. So rather than recording the strings in a traditional orchestral style, they were close mic'd, okay, placing microphones very near each of the instruments. Okay, and it produced a very dry, intimate sound, a very melodious articulation, okay, and a sense of tension as well as immediacy. Okay, multi-track precision. Each instrument group was carefully balanced using multi-track recording, allowing for precise control over dynamics and tone. The result is a stark, almost cinematic soundscape. Okay, the song demonstrated that a pop track could dispense entirely with guitars and drums while still achieving commercial and artistic success. Okay, so I'm just going to play the song.
If you eat garlic raw.
Okay. Yes, like I said, if you really need an advertisement, I suppose we can kind of Right. Okay. Yeah, listen to that.
Rigby. It's up the rights in the church where a wedding has been. It's in a dream, waits at the window, wearing the face that she keeps in a jar by the door. Who is it for? Empty, writing the words of a sermon that no one will hear. Up in the night when there's nobody.
Right. So I will link the songs in the description box. So you find that it's very different from any rock song, okay, from any kind of rock instrumentation. It features a string octet, a traditional orchestral style of music, um, and each of the instruments appear to have their own voice in the song. Okay, so that was a very distinctive quality of Eleanor Rigby. Next, you have I'm Only Sleeping. Okay, so I'm Only Sleeping was again a very distinctive Beatles sound, possesses a distinctive Beatles sound. It explored tape reversals. Okay, so George Harrison recorded a guitar solo which was then reversed on tape to make it fit musically. Okay, then the solo was composed in reverse. Notes were carefully planned so that when flipped, they aligned with the chord changes. Okay, so the result is a dreamlike fluid sound where notes swell into existence rather than decay naturally, and it became the hallmark of psychedelic music. Okay, so very significant again. Um, the guitar was played solo and it was then reversed on tape, and then notes were carefully planned out so that when the guitar recording was flipped, it aligned with the chord changes. Okay, so let's listen to that.
Mr. Balachandran. బంటి వీళ్ళు
Okay, just one second. You have to. I wonder why it's not, because I have, anyway, I have subscription ad free YouTube.
Everybody seems to think I'm lazy. I don't mind. Things that will make for my day, my mind away. I got to know I'm on sleeping.
Okay, so that's a distinctive sound of the Beatles. Another distinctive sound, and it kind of it formed the hallmark of psychedelic music. You play the guitar, you solo in such a way that once it is flipped, it aligns with the chord progressions, and then it kind of the solo gets composed in reverse almost. Okay, and again, you have Strawberry Fields Forever, which was also a landmark in studio experimentation. So, what the song did, it was created by merging two completely different recordings. Okay, one slower and more orchestral, the other one more faster and rhythm driven. Okay, because they were in different keys and tempos, engineers altered tape speed to match them, a groundbreaking use of vari speed recording. Okay, the track opens with a mellotron, which was an early keyboard sampler. Okay, adding a haunting flute like sound. Okay, additional effects include reverse cymbals, um, layered instrumentations, and subtle tape edits throughout. The song redefined what was possible in editing and production, showing that a recording could be constructed from multiple disparate elements. Okay, so again, very significant. It was created by merging two different recordings, one which was slower and more orchestral, and the other one which was faster and more rhythm driven. Okay, so I will just play that for a little bit.
మీకు పుట్టినవాడు
Right. Right. So, those are the distinct sounds. Um, and yeah, you have to remember that the track opens with a mellotron, okay, adding a haunting flute-like sound. Okay. Next, you have Day in the Life, orchestral crescendo and tape editing. Okay. So, this forms a part of the Sergeant Pepper. It is the closing track of Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and it is one of the most ambitious recordings ever made. Okay, so a 40-piece orchestra was recorded playing from the lowest to highest notes in a chaotic crescendo. Okay, it was recorded multiple times and was layered using multi-track recording to create a massive sound. All right. The famous final piano chord was recorded with multiple pianos played simultaneously and allowed to decay naturally. Okay. Engineers increased the volume gradually to capture the fading resonance. The song combines two separate compositions by Lennon and Paul McCartney, stitched together using tape editing. Okay, so important to highlight that bit as well. Okay, so I'm just going to play that song. So what does it do? It uses an orchestral glissando. Okay, important to remember that. It's a 40-piece orchestra which was recorded playing from the lowest to highest notes in a chaotic crescendo. Okay, lowest to highest notes. It was recorded multiple times. Okay, and was layered using multi-track recording to create a massive sound. All right, The famous final piano chord was recorded with multiple pianos played simultaneously, and the sound was allowed to decay naturally. And engineers increased the volume gradually to capture the fading resonance of the song. Okay. The song combines two separate compositions by Lennon and McCartney, and they were stitched together using tape editing. Okay, so I'm going to play that song now.
What the news today? Oh, about a lucky man who's great. And though the news was wrong, that is that saw the photograph. Find out in a song. He didn't notice that the lights had changed. Crowded people stood and stared. They'd seen his face before. Nobody was really sure if he was gonna. I saw a film today, oh boy.
And it's worth listening to throughout. Okay.
Just the war.
Worth listening to the whole song in order to understand the entire experimentation of the song.
But I just had to look. Having read.
Right. So you can see that, George Martin calls it a sound explosion, like a sound orgasmic sound when it's reaching a crescendo, which is kind of crazy of him using this, right?
Go, fell out of bed, dragged a comb across my head. On the way downstairs and drank a cup. Then looking up, I noticed I was late. I'm a coat and grabbed my hat, made the bus in seconds flat. On the way upstairs and had a smoke. And somebody
So this
spoke
part
and
is
I
by
went,
Paul McCartney, okay? Two different kinds of songs, two different kinds of compositions stitched together. They do that again in Abbey Road with uh, with Don't Let Me Down.
today I'll go for 5 and you. And though the halls were round, I found them all. Now they know how many holes it takes to fill the eye.
Okay, so that's the entirety of the song. Maybe going to close it now. But you can understand, how the orchestra reaches a glissando of sorts. Okay. George Martin very particularly calls it a sound orgasm, which is what it is actually. Um, right. So then you have Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Okay, and it also uses a lot of studio effects. Okay, so what does it do? It uses these very speed low vocals. Okay, so the vocals were recorded at different tape speeds to alter pitch and tone, giving them an ethereal quality. So this is actually kind of starting out your you know it kind of, it is propelling one towards towards the psychedelic sound of the Beatles. Okay, so these are songs from Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and it actually has that immense influence on psychedelic music of that particular time and later as well. So Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds showcases extensive use of studio effects. Um, mm, 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 mm. Just 1 second, please. Right. So the Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, makes use of such, distinctive psychedelic sounds. Um, and it has influences on albums such as Pink Floyd's Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Okay. So it kind of makes use of that same kind of experimental music, surreal storytelling, and sonic textures that mirror, the sound effects of songs in Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Okay, then you have the Beach Boys' Smiley Smile. Okay, their album Smiley Smile. Um, uh, okay, so and also Pet Sounds. Okay, particularly Paul McCartney said that Pet Sounds to a certain extent influenced the sound of Sergeant Pepper, but it was suddenly a creative, rather than an osmosis where one influences other, it was more of a symbiosis, okay, where, both, both the artistic styles were influenced by each other. Okay, then you have Rolling Stones. Okay, their Satanic Majesty's Request. Okay, so often seen as the Stones' direct response to Sergeant Pepper, which also used layered sound techniques. Okay, and mystical themes and all of that. Um, right. So those are all the kinds of albums that were influenced by um Beatles psychedelic sound. You also have Grateful Dead, okay, Anthem of the Sun, okay, which also used experimental recording techniques, blending live and studio sound, okay. Then you have Jefferson Airplane, okay, where they also use fragmented strong structures and psychedelic collage. Then you have The Doors' Strange Days, okay, which also had that more introspective psychedelia. So a lot of, you could say that Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band kind of like started out an entire an entire revolution in music experimentation, okay, and kind of pushed the limits of what music production could be like, and kind of encouraged other musicians to follow suit. Okay, all right. So those are the kinds of points to remember while listening to while taking into account the kind of psychedelic experimentations that they were doing at the time. Then you have Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, okay, which showcases extensive use of studio effects. Okay, very speed local vocals. So the vocals were recorded at different tape speeds to alter pitch and tone, giving them an ethereal quality. Okay, Low re organ processed to sound dreamlike. Layered guitars and tambura drone was also used. Okay, so low re organ processed to sound dreamlike, and layered guitars and tambura drones. All right. There was also multi-track complexity, so multiple layers of instruments and vocals were combined, pushing the limits of four-track recording technologies. Okay, so I'm just going to play Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Okay. Okay.
Hello? Hello. Chacha?
Right. So, in case anyone is interested, just wait for the ads to pass. Actually, I have an actual account which is ad free, so I don't know why my ad free account is not signed in when I actually have a signed in actual account. It's because, like,
Picture yourself in a boat on a river with tangerine trees and marmalade skies. Somebody calls you, you answer quite slowly. A girl with kaleidoscope eyes. Follow her down to a bridge by a fountain. The rocking horse people eat marshmallow pies. Everyone smiles as you drift past the flowers that grow so incredibly high.
right. I'm just enjoying myself way too much. Um, but that's going to be part of it. It can't be helped. Anyway, so right. So I'm going to link the songs in the description box. Um, right. So it uses low-ray organ processed to sound dreamlike. You can see that the video also complements the sound of the recording. Okay, and it also uses layered guitars and tambura drones. All right, and there's also like there's a multi-track complexity, so multiple layers of instruments and vocals are combined, pushing the limits of four-track recording technology. So all of it is very important. um okay, and because it marks a, an entire paradigm shift in what music production can be like. Okay, all right, so it paves the path for the future almost. Right, and then you have Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite. Yeah, it's a masterpiece of sound collage. Okay, again, it uses tape manipulation to create a circus atmosphere. All right, recordings of Calliope organs were chopped off into pieces. The tape fragments were tossed in the air and randomly reassembled. All right, so very significant. The chaotic arrangement produced a surreal carnival like soundscape. All right, so again, very significant. I'll just play that again. So we'll just listen to Paul McCartney sing that. Right? I think it's totally fine. Strange days indeed, completely okay. We'll just listen to him and then we'll just listen to the studio recording.
It's like, perhaps it's like a national. Don't leave! It's
one of my favorite albums of the 2000s. Mhm. Hmm. Right, so that's the entirety of the song. Right, so that is the sound. Okay. So if you can see that it's like it's a sound collage. All right, it's not kind of carrying with the same melody throughout. Okay, it's breaking it into parts and chopping into pieces. And so if you listen to the studio recording, you'll find that recordings of Calliope organs were chopped into pieces, and then the tape fragments were tossed in the air and randomly reassembled. Okay, so very significant. And the song is actually referring to circus life. All right, so this the sound of the song is also carnival like soundscape. Okay, next you have I Am the Walrus. Okay, actually, so we are going to continue with I Am the Walrus in the next recording. Okay, next lecture. Okay, so I'm just going to pause the recording right now because it's best to kind of do it in parts. And thank you all so much for listening.